do I have your attention? Okay, so we've just come off of our first DCU film in Superman, and it was great. I had a great time with it. I think it's honestly the greatest Superman film of all time, with all due respect to Christopher Reeve's Superman 78. But yeah, this film was such a great time, such a great start to the DCU. Couldn't have imagined a better one. But yeah, it's objectively a success as well, which means the DCU is in full swing, no matter what anyone says. Anyway, so this has kind of led to, increased discussions surrounding the future of the DCU, the timeline in general, with regards to specific characters. Right now, it's looking very much unorthodox because we have a geriatric Hal Jordan and a young John Stewart and a young Superman. And so it's kind of got everyone speculating on what the timeline could look like. But specifically, the character I want to highlight, which is obviously probably one of the hottest topics of discussion in terms of the timeline of the DCU, is Batman, the most popular DC superhero and arguably the most popular superhero of all time. So I thought it'd be cool for me to make a video about this. I came up with a timeline and I think I don't want to say perfect, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think it's pretty good. It's very much unorthodox. There've been a lot of questions, especially with the Teen Titans film that got announced, what the roster is going to be like, because Brave the Bold is coming out in 2028, and that is going to follow Damian just coming into the picture. So if Damian is already in the picture, Bruce must be quite old, and characters like Dick Grayson should be an adult. So people have been wondering what a Teen Titans film would look like, what the roster would look like. But I think this timeline is kind of going to give you a clearer view of what that could look like. Again, it's very much unorthodox in terms of the ages of the characters, but I think it perfectly encapsulates the history of the Batfamily and respects every part of it, So hopefully you stay around, stay with me. It might get confusing, so just stay with me. Feel free to watch the video back if you missed anything, and if you enjoyed this, like and subscribe, comment, let me know what you would want in a future video, and leave me some feedback as well. So without further ado, let's get it. Okay, so before we go on, I want to set some ground rules. First and foremost, I'm going to be mentioning present day DCU quite a lot in this video. So when I say present day DCU, I don't mean present day as in at the time of the events of Superman. I actually mean 2028, which is the estimated time of release for Brave and the Bold. That's what I mean when I say present day DCU. Present day DCU from this perspective would be the start of the events of Brave and the Bold, so 2028. So just keep that in mind. So just assuming that the DCU currently, like literally currently right now at the time of Superman, is in the year 2025, and so Brave and the Bold, the events of Brave and the Bold would happen in 2028, 3 years later. So just wanted to put that out the way. When I say present day DCU in this video, I mean 2028 at the start of the events of Brave and the Bold. So if there are any more ground rules that I missed, I'll probably set them before I go on, but for now this is all you need to know. So again, please stay with me. This might get confusing, but I hope you're able to keep up, and yeah, let's go. Okay, so real quick before I start, I'm going to go over the characters' ages and where they are at in their careers in present day DCU. Just to reiterate, present day DCU refers to 2028 at the start of Brave and the Bold, not 2025 Superman, 2028 right before the events of Brave and the Bold start. So I'm going to be going over the characters' ages and where they are in their careers, and the characters that I'm focusing on specifically for this video are Batman, Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, and finally Damian Wayne. So those are the characters that I'm going to be focused on. I'm not going to focus on the extended Batfamily. With a character like Barbara Gordon, for instance, you could just pretty much assume she's the same age or a year younger than Dick Grayson. In this timeline, Dick and Jason are the same age, just a few months apart. So Barbara is probably around that same age group or probably a year younger, so just to get that out of the way. Okay, so let's begin. So we start off in present day DCU, that is the year 2028, 3 years after the events of Superman. Bruce Wayne is Batman. He's currently 35 years old and has no Robin. Dick Grayson is Nightwing. He's 17 years old and is at Titan's Tower as we speak with the other Teen Titans, that is the OG roster of Cyborg, Starfire, Beast Boy, and Raven. Tim Drake is 15 years old. Tim is abroad studying in college. He got a scholarship. He's a genius. He graduated high school at 15, so he's outside of the country. Had to step down as Robin due to that, so Batman has no Robin currently. Jason Todd is 17 years old as well, but he's still presumed dead at this point. And Damian Wayne, who's just come in, is 9 years old. Hope we're able to get that. That is the state of the Batfamily in present day DCU. Now I'm going to go over the history. And when I say the history, I mean from year 1 of Batman's career. So when he first became Batman, I'm not going to go to his training years. I'm just going to start from when he became Batman. Batman year 1. Okay, let's go. So we start off 10 years ago, that is 10 years from present day DCU. This would make Bruce Wayne 25 years old in his first year as the Caped Crusader of Gotham City. 2 years later, a 27-year-old Bruce Wayne meets a 9-year-old Dick Grayson whose parents have just been murdered. Bruce decides to take Dick in and make him his protege. Dick becomes Robin that same year and is Robin for 6 years. His first 4 years as Robin are spent learning on the fly, making Bruce overprotective of him. Dick, however, learns things relatively quickly due to his acrobatic prowess. His last 2 years as Robin are filled with tension and arguments with Bruce about going off on his own and doing his own thing. This will lead the way for Dick to leave the mantle of Robin at 15 years old, having been Robin for 6 years. Dick goes off on his own at 15 and becomes Nightwing that same year in Bloodhaven. You could have a solo film that kind of chronicles his origins as his own superhero in Bloodhaven at 15 years old. The end of that movie could set up a creation of the Teen Titans as Dick looks to recruit his own young team of heroes. Anyway, so Dick leaves the mantle of Robin at 15, leaving Bruce Robinless until he comes across a 15-year-old stray kid picking out the tires of the Batmobile. This is Jason Todd. Bruce decides to take this kid in and train him to be his next Robin. Jason also learns on the fly but learns things even faster than Dick, as he's been on his own most of his life and so he's a natural fighter. This also informs Jason's more aggressive, unhinged nature, which leads to his death 6 months later. Jason would still be 15 years old at the time of his death. Bruce would mourn for 6 months, where he would go through his arc of being more aggressive and unhinged, until a 14-year-old genius kid comes in and deduces Bruce's secret identity along with Dick Grayson and even Jason Todd, the former Robin. This 14-year-old genius is Tim Drake. Bruce, impressed by this kid's genius and deductive skills, but still reeling from the death of Jason Todd, reluctantly takes this kid in and trains him to be his third Robin. Tim would also learn things on the fly with a stricter training regimen by Bruce to avoid a second Jason situation. Tim is Robin for a year until he's 15. That same year at 15 years old, Tim Drake graduates from high school early because he's a genius and gets a scholarship to study in college abroad. Tim now has to step down as Robin, leaving Bruce without a Robin yet again. This leaves us in present day DCU 2028, where Bruce is now 35, having been Batman for 10 years. Dick Grayson is 17 years old at this point, having already formed the Teen Titans. The Teen Titans would be in their second or third year as a team at this point in Titans Tower. Jason Todd, who's also 17, is still presumed dead at this point, so you could do an Under the Red Hood storyline later on with Damian in the picture. Tim Drake is 15 years old and he's in college. And Damian Wayne, a 9-year-old kid who claims to be Bruce's biological son, comes into the picture, and this is where Brave and the Bold starts off. So this is the history of the Batfamily in the DCU to present day timeline 2028 in the DCU. Okay, so real quick, just to go over in a more condensed version of what I explained earlier, Bruce becomes Batman at 25 years old. He's Batman for 2 years until he's 27 when he meets Dick Grayson at 9 years old and takes him in. Dick becomes his Robin that same year and is Robin for 6 years until he's 15 years old. Dick would leave the mantle of Robin at 15 and go off on his own to become Nightwing. Jason Todd would come in at that exact time. Bruce would take him in. Jason would be 15 years old at that point as well. Jason would be Robin for 6 months until his death. 6 months afterwards, Bruce would mourn and go through his arc of being more aggressive and unhinged until Tim Drake comes in after those 6 months at 14 years old and becomes the third Robin. I would go ahead and add that Tim would actually come in during the 6 months that Bruce is mourning and kind of help him through it. Within the span of those 6 months, Tim would go through his training as well and would continue when he becomes Robin. But after those 6 months, Tim would officially become Bruce's third Robin. He will be Robin for a year until he's 15 years old and graduates from high school. He would go to college abroad on a scholarship, leaving Bruce without a Robin yet again. That would be present day DCU 2028. At the start of Brave and the Bold, Damian would come in at 9 years old, claiming to be Bruce's biological son, and that is where the events of Brave and the Bold would start. Okay, so real quick, I just want to reconcile the timeline with what's going on in the DCU presently as we speak. Assuming the DCU is currently in 2025 during the events of Superman, that would make Bruce 32 years old at that point. That's due to the fact that Brave and the Bold takes place 3 years in 2028 after the events of Superman, so there's a 2-year age gap between Clark and Bruce. Clark would be 30 in 2025 and Bruce would be 32, which would also make Dick Grayson 14 years old and would also mean that he's still Robin during the events of Superman, which I think is pretty interesting. There have been rumors about Dynamic Duo being canon to the DCU, and I think if that's the case, the timeline I created kind of lends itself perfectly to that. If they decide to make that creative decision, you could just make it so that maybe Jason comes in 2 years before Dick leaves the mantle of Robin, and the events of Dynamic Duo could kind of take place within that time span, and then Dick leaves 2 years later and Jason becomes Robin and dies 6 months later. I could make another video on that if you guys would want, just let me know. But yeah, I just wanted to make this video real quick. The discourse surrounding the DCU Batman is exhaustive, but it's fun. You know, it's fun to be excited about a new universe, and people are wondering what the timeline could look like. It's so unorthodox right now. How do we have a year 3 Superman and a Batman who has Damian and a fully fledged Bat family? So I think the timeline that I made kind of perfectly encapsulates the history while also keeping the characters relatively young and maintaining the potential to tell more stories in the future. You know, even with the Teen Titans, in this timeline, Dick is still a teenager, so Teen Titans wouldn't have to be a prequel. It could still be set in present day. I think that adds the stakes of the story. So yeah, I'm yapping right now, sorry, but I just wanted to make this video real quick. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. Turn on post notifications for more videos, and please comment. Let me know what you guys would want in a future video, and give me some feedback as well. I might do a part 2, which is a more refined version of this timeline. So give me some feedback and I will shout you out. But yeah, thank you guys for watching so much. Really excited for the DCU, and without further ado, peace.